John DeSando.
Classics, let's go to the movies and share some popcorn, soda pop with our friends. Turn off our cell phones and get away. Night or day, it's John DeSando on the radio.
Cinema Classics is produced by John DeSando. It airs Thursdays at 8:01 p.m. on WCBE 90.5 FM. Listen to the shows and read the reviews online at WCBE.org.
Hi, I'm Wayne Miller. I'm guest host today for John, filling in for John.
And I'm Wayne's sidekick, Keith Hake.
Okay, Keith. Hey, Keith. I tell you, this was a movie that I was not that interested in seeing because all these Japanese Godzilla movies, until I read, your wife texted me and John about this movie. And she raved about it. Now tell us, what was so good about it that you guys, I assume you felt the same way as
Oh, I did definitely. The movie is unlike the Godzilla monster verses that are out now.
Yep.
Very unlike it. It takes the basics back to the 1954 film G, that Godzilla is a metaphor or a symbol of the nuclear destruction, war. I mean, he is a monster. He is not like in the newer movies, a good guy that is here to save the planet and to save humans.
Right.
He's out to destroy us.
Yeah.
He is there just to
He's hateful.
total destruction, hates humans, hates everything about us, and will do anything he can to kill us all.
And I even brought my little toy Godzilla here who's eating Santa Claus. So that's how mean this guy is. But you know, you bring up the thing, and what Lewis said, the Monsterverse, and it's funny, I really enjoyed those movies. They're American made. The first one came out in 2014, then 2019. And what's interesting, we'll talk more about the 37 Godzilla movies that have been out there. But the last one they did just a couple of years ago, Godzilla versus Kong. And one thing that's interesting in doing my research, coming up this coming year, and same director, a couple of the same stars that were in Godzilla vs. Kong a couple of years ago, called Godzilla X Kong, The New Empire. And so far they're saying the plot is kept under wraps. So, but did you like those? Did you and Lola like the Monsterverse?
Really enjoyed them. Again, they're a completely different type of movie. And again, they're taken from, like you said, the American standpoint.
Yeah.
What's more interesting about this one is if you're any kind of a history buff, you know nothing about post-World War II Japan.
Yeah.
This is definitely a movie to see.
Yes.
It shows the destruction of war, how destroyed, both culturally, economically, and just emotionally, people of Japan were after the war. And then, and the title actually, Godzilla -1 or the G -1 is actually taken from that, where Japan is so defeated. They're from a scale from 100 to 0. They are literally at 0.
Right.
And then in comes Godzilla, so -1.
As I'm trying to rebuild, he rips him up again,
Yes,
and you're absolutely right, because, and the interesting thing, that original Japanese one got 1954, but then they which I've seen, and it was very good, but then they took, only kept about an hour of it, and they inserted a bunch of scenes with Raymond Burr.
From 1956,
who was starting his reign as Perry Mason.
And changed the title to Godzilla, King of the Monsters.
Exactly. And which, as a kid, I really liked seeing that. But the Japanese people had at least nearly 9 to 10 years to rebuild after the mass destruction they suffered, during World War II. But this one takes place right at the end there, and the little the hero of the movie, a kamikaze pilot who decides he isn't going to sacrifice his life, but then he winds up in Japan, and it does kind of go through the next couple of years. Godzilla makes an appearance early in the movie, but then nearly a half hour as he's building a life with this homeless woman whose family and his family
Right.
all dead.
And child.
And literally in the rubble, digging their way out of the firebombed Tokyo that really was destroyed. You know, we always talk about Hiroshima, Nagasaki, and the A-bombs. They lost nearly as many people and as much destruction. The firebombing the Americans did on the Japanese. But tell us a little bit, because Lewis said she really liked the almost heartwarming human story of this.
That's, I think, what draws everyone into this movie. It's not only, you know, the monster movie, but it's and the history, but it's more of a human side. There's every single character has their baggage from World War II.
Yeah.
Every character has a backstory, and they don't dwell on each one individually. Just boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
They let it kind of flow into it, so it's a natural progression. So
Right.
they don't throw any type of morals into your face or anything. But you see the troubles that the Japanese people had and their culture of where they're trying to go from the feudal Japan into the modern age.
Yeah.
And how all that baggage kind of comes along and how they have to change their way of thinking.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's also a buddy movie where the hero joins a ragtag crew, and they become his friends and his supporters for his post-traumatic stress syndrome.
Yeah, exactly.
And really help him out.
Yep.
And he's got the family that he wants to have, but he can't let go of his past.
Exactly.
So it's a fight through the whole film of him trying to basically redeem himself.
And almost how he felt survivor's guilt, because he decided not to go on this last kamikaze mission, flew his plane to this island that, and these mechanics there say, well, your plane's okay. You said, he said, well, I had engine failure or something like that. Then survivor's guilt, because we see.
Well, we don't want to give too much of the film away.
I know. You always accuse me of that.
Don't give any away. But
he has a survivor's guilt that he has to overcome.
Yes, he does.
And his little makeshift family, a cute little baby girl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kiko. Yeah. Very nice. Now, Wayne, do you know anything about like the size of the Godzilla compared to the other Godzillas you were talking about?
Well, a little bit. This one is good size.
Yeah, he's
And,
195 feet, and the original was 165 feet.
Well, it's interesting, when that Godzilla versus Kong came out a couple of years ago in one magazine, they had a comparison. They talked more about how Kong really grew quite a bit from the excuse me, original Kong. But they didn't. But they said Godzilla, you know, had kind of grown a little bit too. But you notice early in this film, the first sighting of Godzilla, he was a smaller Godzilla. He must have grown in it was a couple of years after, you know, when he finally
and that is also the nice thing about this Godzilla. The MonsterVerse Godzillas, he's more lizard-like.
Yes.
And just meaner looking. Where this one is more, you can tell he's battered from the atomic age. He was some type of a prehistoric monster that was bombarded by the nuclear war, and then grew and morphed into this giant creature, and developed, of course, the atomic breath that he's famous for. And the glowing spines down the back.
I got a little bit of the glowing spines, but I could have bought another little Godzilla that had this big blue thing coming out of its mouth. There was going to be the radioactive his breath, which in the original movies was always fun to see, as it's kind of like the flames shoot out of Godzilla's mouth.
Yeah, and part of what they brought back from the original, besides the shape and the feel of the monster, and of course the atomic breath and the spines and everything, was
had this big blue thing coming out of its mouth. There was going to be the radioactive his breath, which in the original movies was always fun to see, as it's kind of like the flames shoot out of Godzilla's mouth.
Yeah, and part of what they brought back from the original, besides the shape and the feel of the monster, and of course the atomic breath and the spines and everything, was the eccentric scientist.
With the kind of long
flow of hair, and of course in the original he had eye patch and the scar.
Yes, exactly.
It was a lot of fun. And then I don't like to talk about scenes, but the one scene that they brought back was the train scene.
Yeah.
And again, the original Godzilla, grabbing it in his mouth, and,
Yep.
a whole lot of fun. And that's actually how I've read that they've gone back and saw how, scale-wise, how big he is, because they can go by the train and
Yep.
then kind of stack it and go by that.
Same thing with the original King
Yeah.
Kong. Okay, we're going to wrap up here, but before we do, Keith, what would you say to our listeners out there? Do you recommend them going to see this?
Oh, I definitely recommend seeing it. It's only like a little over 2-hour run.
Yeah.
Very enjoyable movie. I would not recommend it for kids.
Y'all.
Not recommend it for kids, more because, again, this is the monster where they show some graphic scenes.
Yeah.
Nothing too bad, but they're still a little graphic for kids.
Well, I would definitely recommend it, and
I'm John DeSando.
Classics, let's go to the movies and share some popcorn, soda pop with our friends. Turn off our cell phones and get away. Night or day, it's John DeSando on the radio. We'll watch the credits from up high.